Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel Vigil, taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel Vigil.
It's hard to believe that the NBA draft is here. I feel like, we were just watching the Nuggets win a championship. Now there's a whole new champion here, and yet it's time to even think ahead to next season. We got Jake Shapiro in studio today to be able to talk a little bit about, of course, what the heck should the Nuggets do with the draft? And we also have to talk about MPJ. So we're going to start with the draft, obviously, because the excitement's starting to boil around tonight. And while people, I think they get a little bit excited for the NBA draft, it's kind of like who actually are the big names we need to watch?
Well, this draft is horrible, honestly. This is not a good draft. There's no Wembanyama. There's not even like a Scoot Henderson or Apollo Banchero type. The top players are a guy from France that you're going to hear, and I don't even know how to pronounce his name, honestly. His name's Reicher. You've got Alex Sarr, who's also French, but he plays in Australia. And then the top guy people might know is Reed Shepherd, who's a guard from Kentucky. And even that, he was an undersized guard. So you're going to maybe end up with a Colorado Buffalo in the top 5 and Cody Williams, which if he goes higher than 3, he'd be the highest Buffalo ever drafted because Chauncey Billups got drafted at 3.
Okay, so tell me this. Did his stock, because a lot of people were saying he was going to be the number 1 overall pick, did his stock drop because of injuries?
Injuries, and he played through injury in the March Madness games, and he looked horrible, and that really hurt him. So it kind of sucks, right? Because it's like, you want to reward the kid for going out there and being part of the team and trying his hardest to be a part of the team. But at the same time, he gets punished because he played bad, but there wasn't, he wasn't even good enough to start in those games. Like he had to come off the bench, but he really looked that bad. So it's hard to say with Cody because he only played 15 games of healthy Division I ball. Same time, Michael Porter Jr. played like 1 college basketball game, and he's had a great NBA career, especially for drafted at 15. So the problem is, do you want to take this player at 5? And that's the problem with this draft, Rachel, is all the GMs are sitting here with top 5 picks going, hey, ownership, this is a bad draft. Don't fire me. This guy is not going to be a star player. Cody Williams is not going to be, even a Jamal Murray level star. But Cody Williams could be a guy like Aaron Gordon, who's a super role player, a top 75 player in the NBA for multiple years. Any team would want, just not the number 1 guy. So to think about this draft is almost to think about a normal draft, like the top 10 has just been cut off and the draft starts at 11. Because Cody Williams would probably go at 12 or 13 in a normal draft. So with the Denver Nuggets, they have the 28th pick. So you're probably going, well, they're probably not going to get somebody good. The thing is, the guys from 4 to 40 in this draft, they're all the same. So they still should get a decent player out of this draft, like very similar to what Julian Strawther was last year. And we saw some signs that he could have a really good career. He got hurt last year, so we really don't know yet on Julian.
So what's so funny, because when I look at this Denver Nuggets team, I'm like, don't go with the youth. Don't go with the youth. Please get us some more veteran players, because that feels like that's what they desperately needed this year to be able to go back to back. Obviously, it doesn't happen. They get bounced by the Minnesota Timberwolves. So what do they need? What position do they need to go after in the draft?
Well, let me ask that to you, because they have some serious needs. They obviously need another ball handler off the bench. They had struggles with that this year. They also obviously need a backup center because they didn't have a playable backup big for the last 2 years, really.
Which that's where I'm like, you have to go get a veteran. Like, this is a must need. You don't need somebody who can develop into that role.
So when you say go get a veteran, do you mean an upperclassman in college, or do you mean trade the pick for somebody?
Yep, trade the pick for somebody who has NBA experience already, because that's what they desperately needed this year, and they couldn't get it. And so, I don't know. I feel like you bring up the name like Mason Plumley all the time. Like, have him come out here, help a little bit, give Jokic a little bit of free time, but still not, those non-Jokic minutes can be really tough.
Well, Mason Plumley would be a free agent signing.
Amazing.
Which would be great. And there's
How much would he want?
Well, he'd be a veteran minimum. The Nuggets could only offer players, veteran minimums in the fantasy world that KCP re-signs with the Nuggets. So you're looking at a couple different veterans, whether it's like a Rashawn Holmes or someone like that are decent backup bigs that are playable, but they're not, as good as maybe you would hope a backup big to be, where they're questionable to be in your playoff rotation. Look, what they got out of Justin Holiday last year as a veteran minimum was about the best possible outcome for that. So can you get that again from a center position? Maybe. But in my mind, you want to get the free agent backup center and you want to draft a center, because then you got the two options. Where you want to use your trade asset is for a guard, a player that can create, someone a little bit better and steady, because you don't want to use two chips there, because you already have a bunch of young guards on your roster with Jalen Pickett, Julian Strother, Colin Gillespie. So in my mind, you draft a center and you sign a center. You don't trade your pick this year, because the Nuggets have honestly a guy that they really like at 28, and a guy who stopped working out with a bunch of other teams because seemingly he was promised to be drafted by the Nuggets at 28.
Yeah.
And that guy is named Deron Holmes. He's a junior from Dayton. Big man. Scored 20 points a game this year in college, shot just under 40% from three, 9 rebounds a game, 2 blocks a game. Dayton's always one of the better teams in the nation
every single year
for a mid-major. And, he's kind of a throwback player in a way where, he's got some muscle to him, but he's also more athletic and lanky, like these modern bigs. I'm not saying he's going to be, a superstar big man, but could I see him playing that perfect role that the Nuggets crave for Zeke Naji, where it's like you can play with or without Nikola Jokic? I could see that from Deron Holmes. They need a guy who can play alongside Jokic as a 4 and also a center that can play without Jokic, and hopefully Holmes could turn into that. The problem is we've only seen one of these rookies the last couple of years actually play their rookie year, and that was Christian Brown. And like you said, the Nuggets need the help now.
They do. And I actually want to, because I feel like every single time Zeke Naji's name gets brought up, everyone's like, that was such a terrible contract. And Jake actually has a really good point of why it's not a bad contract extension, and actually what might have been smarter in the long term of things.
Well, let's just say we go with your scenario, Rachel, which is they're going to trade their first round pick. They can't just trade their first round pick for anything unless they also attach a player to it with the salary. So Zeke Naji is scheduled to make about like $8.5 million this year, which means the Nuggets could trade back and get a player who makes $8.5 million a year. Obviously, Zeke Naji struggled in the NBA. He's got term on that contract, so teams aren't just going to take Zeke Naji and say, here's our good player for your struggling asset. But if the Nuggets attach their first round pick to that, now they might say, okay, we'll give you this guy making $8.5 million for your guy making $8.5 million, because you're giving a first round pick. So the Nuggets could actually end up with a really decent rotation player if they trade future draft picks or this year's first even with Zeke Naji for a player making around $7 to $8 million, which players who make that much money in the NBA would have been like Bruce Brown 2 years ago. There are several really good bench players that make around that much money in the NBA. They're not starters, but the Nuggets need bench guys, as we saw in the playoffs.
For sure. Let's talk trades. Okay. I know.
You mentioned the Zeke Naji trade. You want to get spicy.
Let's get real spicy. Let's mention the biggest name on this Nuggets roster that's involved in the trade talk right now. Michael Porter Jr. What are the latest rumors? Is it possible? Is it good? I'm on team keep MPJ. I'm on team keep the 5 you have. Roll with it. See if you can do it this year. If you can't do it this year, then you probably got to switch things up for Jokic's standpoint. But what side are you on?
Well, let me just peruse you through this. And I know, Rachel, so I'm convincing the audience, but I don't think people realize how good MPJ is. And that's part of the problem. So this year for the Nuggets, he played 81 games, which is phenomenal. Played more games than anyone not named Reggie Jackson.
Only missed a game because he didn't have his shoes.
Correct. Second most points on the team this year behind Jokic. Third most blocks on the team this year behind Peyton Watson and Jokic. Second most rebounds on the team behind Jokic. Made and shot the most threes on the team, which is pretty important when you have an interior piece like Jokic. And if you look across the NBA, players who shot 6.5 threes a game, which is how many Porter shot a game, shot about 39% or better, which is what Porter shot, and blocked about a shot a game. Do you know how many players in the NBA did that this year?
Not a lot. Less than 5?
Nobody.
Holy smokes. Well, then I was still right. I said less than 5.
The only player that would fit into this is Victor Wembanyama, but he didn't qualify. So you're literally talking about the future of the league.
Wow.
And Michael Porter Jr. And then there's a guy who's close, which we love, Derek White, who's had similar numbers. Tyrese Halliburton and Luka have similar numbers, but not quite there. So these are the profiles of star players or all defensive team players that are either elite guards or a 7'3" alien. Michael Porter Jr. is the only player that's a 6'10" forward on this list, which underscores, again, just how vital he is to everything the Nuggets do because he spaces the floor and also provides them size. So with that in mind, with just how important Michael Porter Jr. is to any NBA team, but to the Nuggets specifically in mind, would you want to trade, because these are the trade proposals, Michael Porter Jr., the Philadelphia 76ers, for Buddy Hield and DeAnthony Melton?
Nope.
Okay. Would you want to trade Michael Porter Jr. to the Magic for Wendell Carter Jr., who would be your backup center, and Joe Ingles, a veteran point guard?
No.
Would you want to trade Michael Porter Jr. to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Jared Allen and Karis LeVert?
No.
That's the only one that even draws my interest just a little bit. And I don't think there's a world in which the MPJ in a first-round pick is getting you Jared Allen, who's a former All-Star center, who, again, for you would really be playing backup center. So I don't know how that really fits.
Yep.
You're paying $20 million a year for a backup. And then Karis LeVert, who my favorite NBA tweet of all time is, my favorite thing about Karis LeVert is any single possession, he will embody the ghost of some former NBA legend. You just don't know if it's going to be Michael Jordan or a guy who should be out of the league.
Fair enough.
So, and then the one that's most popular, Rachel, is MPJ and Reggie Jackson to the Hawks for DeAndre Hunter and Bogdan Bogdanovic. And that one's pretty interesting because of the athleticism of Hunter and the shooting of Bogdanovic, as well as the fact that Bogdanovic and Jokic are friends. But again, you're not getting quite the size in Bogdanovic at 6'7" that you have in Porter at 6'10", even though the shooting's similar. Yeah. And Hunter is a true question mark of what that could be as an athlete. So, you know, for the Hawks, they're getting MPJ and they can put that with their first round pick and then whatever they decide to keep between Young and Murray. So it makes sense for the Hawks, but I'm not sure it makes much sense for the Nuggets. And that's the thing is, what trade does make sense for the Nuggets with their top 3 or 4 guys, if you count Aaron Gordon, and it doesn't really pan out. So
nothing makes sense. Just keep your starting 5, please, and thank you.
The only trades that really make sense involve Reggie Jackson and Zeke Naji.
Yeah, well, and it's crazy because all of MPJ stock unfortunately went into the Minnesota Timberwolves series in the playoffs, which he didn't perform that well. So that's why he's being
you know
talked
what? Right now it did, but Bruce Brown just picked up, or is, you know, the Raptors are going to pick up a $23 million option on Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown was horrible this year.
Yeah.
Just horrible. And it made it look like any player that plays with Jokic just gets an artificial inflation on his stats. His 3-point shooting was almost unplayable. He eventually was out of the Raptors rotation, who were just a bad team this year.
Yeah.
So
the Pacers got Pascal, correct?
Yeah, they got Pascal Siakam out of him, and Bruce was decent for the Pacers, but again, they traded him after just signing him, which tells you a lot.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, if Bruce Brown's making $23 million a year and the team that has him doesn't even really want him, MPJ at $35 million a year doesn't really sound that bad.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. So we're both on team keep MPJ, which I'm here for. We're also on get a veteran to be your backup center.
Get a veteran. Yep.
Yeah. So then the question goes back to, what the heck should they do with the draft? You're still going with another center who could be, you know, just in the rotation of that conversation.
Unless Isaiah Collier from USC, who was one of the top freshmen in the country and just got hurt and didn't play much, falls to you all the way in the 20s and you somehow find a way to trade up and get him, which I just don't see that scenario.
Yeah.
I'm going with Holmes. Cool. I like Holmes. I hope he's there for the Nuggets. I also really like Devin Carter, who is a guard from the Big East. He's a good player, but I don't see him falling to the Nuggets. And then, you know, you have a 2nd round pick. And I think that's where the Nuggets might address looking at like a Colorado kid like KJ Simpson or Isaiah Stevens. And that's when you take a chance on maybe a guard who did great in college, who's undersized and didn't do well. You heard at the start of the show who I said was the top college player is going to go in this draft, Reed Shepherd, an undersized guard who performed well in college.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's a freshman versus KJ and Stevens, who are upperclassmen. But if you look at the production, they're not all that different. So why wouldn't you take a chance as an NBA team on a guy who's 3 years older than a top prospect, but had similar college production, and their only deficient is that they're undersized, and maybe they can make it work in the NBA level? Because we've seen in recent years, Jalen Brunson particularly has found a way to make it work.
Yeah, and you're not exactly sure how many minutes you really need to give this guy anyways.
No.
If you're sticking with your starting 5, then it's golden.
And the undersized thing doesn't work well in the playoffs, but you really need this guy to play you through the regular season as Jamal's backup.
Yep. Interesting, Jake Shapiro. I always love chatting NBA with you. You always provide me so many good insights. I can't believe they didn't win a championship this year. I can't believe we're already talking about the draft. It just flies, man. Time is flying.
Summer League's here too in a second.
I know. It's crazy. So many good names. Hopefully the Nuggets, though, keep KCP. That's all I'm asking. Please re-sign him. Figure out a way to keep him here in the Mile High City. That's the biggest one for me. We will see what they end up doing.
I would love
tonight.
them to re-sign Holiday too. I think that would be really nice.
How much are you looking at Holiday, real quick? Quick answer.
That's like a $3-4 million deal.
Beautiful. Easy peasy. Love it.
Problem is teams are going to want to give him 6.
Yeah. And that $2 million makes all the difference right there. So we will see what they end up doing tonight in the draft. Though I appreciate you all for hanging with us for a little bit of time here on Coffee Break. Tomorrow morning back, Denver Sports Daily, 10 a.m. and right back here at 12 p.m. for Coffee Break. Bye, everybody.